Welcome to this week's podcast. I am joined by my co-host Marcin Skok. Marcin, say hi.
Hi.
Today we'll be talking about two things: the Apple Smart Battery Case and all of its lovely glory, and mobile switching, the reality of the U.S. market as it relates to Marcin's recent technology acquisition. So on Tuesday, December 8th, out of the blue, Apple had announced their latest accessory, the Apple iPhone 6s Smart Battery Case, for a measly, cheap $99. Coming in two colors, charcoal gray and white, and is compatible with both the iPhone 6s or the iPhone 6. It's similar to Apple's silicon case, but it has an additional battery bump, whatever you'd like to call it.
It doesn't
Where
exist according to Tim
Right,
Cook. It's not a
right.
hump.
It's not a hump. Let's make that clear. It's not a hump. And it just will add additional battery life to your iPhone, talk time up to 25 hours, and internet use up to 18 hours on LTE, an increase of 8 hours. And before we get into it, I just want to say that when it first came out, when they first announced this, I was like, man, this is the ugliest thing in the world. Why are they releasing this? But it's grown on me.
Like that hump looks like it's growing out of the back of the iPhone.
Yes, but it's a subtle hump.
Is it subtle? Every time I see a photo, it's a noticeable hump. I mean, like I can if we have a video of this podcast, you can see the hump right now. There's probably multiple angles of it.
Just humps just flying by.
Just like humps like all over the back of iPhones. And I mean, we could get into the design. There are two things we can talk about here, right, Nick? We can talk about the design versus the admission, because that's one thing, right? I guess we can talk about that first. This is only for the 6S, and that means that they're admitting something about that product, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can say that, but that's not what Tim says. If you read that article, Tim says we're not admitting that the iPhone has bad battery life. We're just saying, for those that need extra battery life, let's say you're going on a weekend trip or something like that, we're going to give you some extra battery if you like it.
Okay, so I like the integration. I like the fact that it shows because that's the only Apple can do this, because obviously they can connect through the software directly to the OS. They can show you the battery indicator on this pack and the features. I mean, the functionality of it. If I'd like to buy a battery pack for my iPhone, it would be the ideal one. But again, and this might be a patent issue from what I've been reading, the Mophie cases and everything else, it just makes it a flat back. I'm not sure since when a hump, any kind of hump, I mean, it's noticeable in the photo, and I know it's probably not as big as it might be, but it's still a hump, and I've never had a hump on the back of my phone, no matter what model I've owned. So I'm not sure why this is acceptable, given that this doesn't seem to be a one-off for Apple's accessories recently. The keyboard for the iPad Pro does this kind of thing too, where it just has a little bit of a bump that kind of doesn't even, like, I don't know, fold in completely. It looks a little awkward in photos, or I've seen it in person. So any thoughts on that, Nick? Is there a design crisis at Apple, at least with regards to accessories?
Well, there's a lot of rumors with Tim Cook taking on his new leadership role, that he's moved more to not having more of a hands-on approach, but being more a strategist and looking at retail store design as well, and packaging and all that stuff. Where I think now he may be less hands-on, but that is concerning if that's true. Obviously, it's just a rumor. But as I said, I think the design is growing on me. Sure, it looks like an awkward, thing at first, but it's pretty minimalistic if we go back to what minimalistic Apple is, because otherwise you'd have the whole case being, that thickness. And I don't know. Based on the reviews that I've read, I think it feels good in your hand, the fact that the whole thing is not that thick. I think The Verge mentioned that in their video review.
So I think you meant Johnny Ive, right? By the way, that's
What did I say?
said Tim Cook's less hands off with the designs.
Really?
Yeah, that's fine though. It's a
Wow.
early
Just
Sunday morning, so
Sunday morning.
yeah. I mean, yeah, fine. it's not a 10 out of 10 in design. I mean, it's got a very 8 or 9 out of 10 in terms of functionality, and they made this accessory. I mean, just going down the angle, I know that officially they say they don't think the 6S has enough battery life, but if the rumors are true, are they going to start to make this battery case a more important part of their product proposition, especially if they make the 7 thinner? Because is it physically possible to make the battery that much more efficient?
I don't know, honestly. I get all day battery life, virtually all day battery life out of my iPhone. And I don't really see a problem with the battery life. So I'm on Tim Cook's, thing where he says that this is not a necessity and our phones aren't that bad on battery life. It's just if you need it, you can have it. But if it was up to me, if it was a $99 case with a hump, or they made the next iPhone slightly thicker with a longer battery, obviously I would like the slightly thicker thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess we can move on then to an exciting subject. I can start with this. So we wanted to talk today about the realities of the mobile smartphone market, and that's specifically in the US. If you walk around New York City, I mean, we live in New York City, so we're kind of a microcosm in a little bit, but I think this is happening throughout the country. And you look around and you see advertisements and billboards and different types of, well, advertisements, I've already said that, but ads for apps, any kind of app. What you usually see is two small labels on the bottom of these advertisements, and they are for apps which are on the App Store for Apple and Google Play for Android. And for the past 2 or 3 years, I've noticed the amount of apps that are being advertised. Now, obviously, as the market grows, as apps become a more integral part of the economy and of our lives, that this trend has not stopped. Basically, these two platforms have become the flagship platforms for mobile, at least in the United States, and actually that's starting to become a global phenomenon too. So personally, being a Microsoft fan and sticking with Windows Phone for the 3 years, I've been waiting for the app gap, the legendary app gap, to finally start to close. And I think I've reached a point recently, 2 or 3 months ago, where I go to some places like Starbucks or more small chains such as Argo Tea, which have their own apps and loyalty programs, and they can do these things through cards, but it's just much easier when you have a phone and you already have the phone in your hand and you can just swipe it or scan it. So I finally broke and I got an iPhone 6S Plus, and I'm sure Nick is very happy to hear that. He has actually advanced news of this, so he's not actually cheering or dancing right now, but I think he was when I first revealed this to the world. And I think
I threw a small party,
and he didn't invite me, so
a small one.
He didn't even invite me, which just goes to show the extent of our relationship. But there we go. Honestly, I think at this point the market's pretty set. Android is 85 or so percent of the market, or a little bit less, and Apple iOS is 15%. But a lot of the high profit consumers are on the iOS, and I'm breaking down here in tears. Basically, the Windows Phone platform and everything else is kind of less than 2 or 3% at this point. 1.7% of shipments last quarter were Windows Phone devices, and the IDC projects Windows Phone to grow a whopping 0.1% between now and 2019. So that's kind of the story.
That's impressive.
At this point. I see it as not a permanent goodbye. There are many positives on the Microsoft side with the desktop finally taking off and new devices, and people finally being generally excited about the laptops, tablets, and the hybrids that took 2 or 3 years, but finally it feels like there's a momentum growing through this summer into this fall. And if that helps the universal app platform, perhaps developers will start to look at that. But for the next year or so, I'm going to have to live life on the other side and see if I can survive. So I don't know if we had any other comments, Nick, but...
So tell me, what do you hate, what do you love about your brand new amazing phone?
Brand new, amazing. That's putting words in my mouth. Let's see. Well, the apps. That's the main story because Sweet Green has an app. There's an app for smaller, well, not even small, BBC Sport, which I love, football. You have to go on the website. So all these things that you don't, I mean, I know I'm talking to an audience that uses mostly Apple or Android devices. So they're like, wow, you can use apps for this. But for an audience that has been waiting, it's a pretty, what's it called? Freeing. It's very enlightening to see how things are developing, and especially for people like us who are really into tech news, into the tech world, and to see what startups are doing. If a new startup releases an app, it's going to be on iOS first. So the only way I can see it is if I have a device such as this. So that's the thing that I like. The interface took me a while to get used to. I think that Windows still has, and I know that this is a matter of opinion, but functionally, when you open up a Windows phone, you see more at a glance in terms of information. You can separate out your email into different inboxes right on your screen, so you don't have to hunt into your app to see which email account got an email, and it's just more of a productive system. But the app factor kind of outweighs it. I do think that Windows, the UI is definitely more thoughtful about presenting information and getting you in and out of your phone quickly. So that's what I miss about it. Besides that, for a week of use, not much to say. It's the apps, really, at this point. The camera's a lot, not a lot worse. It's definitely almost equivalent in daytime scenarios, but taking pictures at night is much more disappointing than I thought it would be. But that's just what comes with the territory. I also find the quality of Apple's software to not be as impressive as I had hoped. So the Mail app, for instance, many of the advanced features that I could find on Outlook for Windows Phone and mobile are just not there. And for that reason, I got Outlook on iPhone, which is far superior. And many of my apps I've replaced, or at least placed on top, with Microsoft apps. It appears that Microsoft's strength, which is software, shines through on any other platform, which lets me kind of stick with the ecosystem, even though I have switched the hardware. So there's that.
So overall, out of 10, what would you say out of 10?
8.5.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so I know there'll be fans of Windows who will stick with it, and I wish them well, but perhaps in the new year or towards the late fall, we'll see some news about what Microsoft's been working on. There's rumors about a Surface phone. There's rumors about the ways that they're making apps easily be ported to the Windows platform. But just as of now, I need to see how things are for 90% of the population. Perhaps I'll be back. But fight on. Fight the good fight.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Morrison, on how you're going to keep with the iPhone forever now, and an eternity of iPhone. I heard actually, I was talking to your family the other day, and they told me that you were going to actually enroll in the iPhone subscription. So that's great.
You don't
that's
know
great.
my family.
That's great to hear. I'm glad you finally made the switch. In regards to your app comment, welcome to 2007.
There were no apps in 2007.
Okay, 2008.
Thank you. Even I know that.
And so that's it for us this week. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Goodbye.